Welcome. You are listening to Overruled, where we break down the law like it owes us money, and you are able to get your weekly dose of law, disorder, and a bit of legal side-eye. I'm your host, Jay, and whether you're tuning in from your commute, your couch, or the free clinic, you are going to be able to get your legal news. So let's kick things off with what's heating up in these legal streets this week. It's time for Issues on the Docket. And today's docket is stacked like a fresh BBL, baby. Hit it! All right, y'all, so our first story is going to surround the Supreme Court saying no to Minnesota's age limit on gun carrying. Now, in April of 2024, the Supreme Court let a lower court ruling stand that struck down Minnesota's law stopping 18 to 20-year-olds from obtaining permits to carry guns in public. What the So here's the deal. Minnesota had a rule that said if you're under 21, you can't get a public carry permit. But a group of young adults challenged that, saying it violated their Second Amendment rights, which, okay, sure. The lower courts agreed with the teenagers, citing the Supreme Court's 2022 New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin decision, which radically changed how courts assess gun restrictions, requiring them to be rooted in historical tradition dating back to the 18th century. Fun fact, we're squarely into the 21st century. Now, the Supreme Court of the United States is saying that they won't even take up the case, which means the lower court's ruling stands. This is the time when you would want the Supreme Court to step in, right? I would think so, but I digress. The Bruin decision has set a new standard. Basically, unless a gun law is similar to one that existed back in the 1700s, it probably won't fly. Since there isn't a historical tradition of age-based carry laws that existed back then, the court said Minnesota's law didn't make the cut. With the Supreme Court of the United States refusing to intervene, that interpretation now carries serious weight, especially in other states with similar gun laws, such as California, Illinois, New Jersey, which may face these same challenges next. So, what should we think about this, really? So now we're relying on 18th century laws to solve 21st century problems. Interesting. If you can't drink, rent a car, or in some places even buy weed at 20, but you can now carry a loaded weapon in public, that raises a few eyebrows. You should be very concerned about this. Do we need to recall the overwhelming amount of human lives lost, ranging from toddlers and adolescents to senior citizens? Folks, this type of shift in gun policy is not the move this country should lean towards as the world leader in domestic gun violence. Now, this is not said without consideration to the legal claims surrounding the Second Amendment, as well as the common sense that not every teenager and young adult will even want to own a gun, okay? Or even use a firearm in general. Similarly, not every teen or young adult that does choose to own a firearm will be violent in any capacity. This is common sense, guys. I just feel that this already slippery slope could be addressed much, much differently. So, what can you do about it? What can we do about it? Whether you support gun rights or gun reform, this case shows that the rules are shifting fast and in a way that will undoubtedly see a rise in registered gun owners at ages before they can even register to vote. This is on the heels of the deep-rooted problem that America has with gun violence and insights that show gun-related deaths are the most common cause of death for teens and young adults. Y'all, stay informed on what your state is doing, especially as our lawmakers try to get creative with gun safety laws that will actually hold up in court. And while that decision puts age limits on shaky ground, over in Pennsylvania, the conversation is less about rights and more about intent. Let's talk about a fire, a high-profile target, and a whole lot of questions. After a man was arrested for setting a fire outside Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's official residence, questions have swirled about whether it was a hate crime. But Shapiro, he says that that's not his call to make. The fire happened in Harrisburg, right outside the governor's residence, just days after Shapiro, who is Jewish, spoke out strongly against anti-Semitism. The suspect, 30-year-old Adam Hart, reportedly doused a walkway in gasoline and tried to light it. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Hart is facing multiple charges, including attempted arson and risking a catastrophe. But so far, prosecutors haven't added hate crime charges, which has led to a lot of public debate. So we can look at this from a few sides here. In Pennsylvania, hate crime charges require proof that a person was motivated by bias. In this case, potentially anti-Semitism. That means prosecutors need to show clear evidence of intent, like hate-filled speech or writings, to support this charge. Shapiro, while acknowledging the deep emotional toll of rising hate, stressed that charging decisions are up to the Attorney General's office, not him. And that's true. Shapiro, in this situation, is trying to walk a line here. And honestly, he isn't wrong, folks. He's right. The governor shouldn't interfere in prosecutions. But also, let's be real. When a Jewish public figure is targeted days after condemning anti-Semitism, the public's going to ask some tough questions and have a justified side eye at the situation. I am among those people. Folks aren't just looking for legal precision. They want leadership as well. So while Shapiro may not believe it is his place to view this as a hate crime, he should be impressing on law enforcement the importance of a thorough and transparent investigation for the sake of his family and for the sake of the citizens of Pennsylvania who elected him. After all, he's an elected leader by the people. So folks, whether it's synagogues, schools, or someone's front yard, these incidents don't happen in a vacuum. We need to be able to keep the pressure on elected officials so that they can strengthen hate crime laws and speak out clearly. And for you, if you ever see bias-based threats in your own community, don't wait to report them. Do not be a passive bystander. Do something. Silence protects no one. Speaking of silence, sometimes justice gets handed down without the full story ever being told in court. That's exactly what's happening in Texas, where a community is still mourning one of the worst hate-filled attacks in recent memory. The man who killed 23 people in a racist mass shooting at a Walmart in El Paso won't face the death penalty in Texas, even though Texas is very, very known for it. Back in 2019, if you can recall, a white supremacist drove to an El Paso Walmart and opened fire, targeting Latino shoppers. It was one of the deadliest hate crimes in modern U.S. history. He already pled guilty to 90 federal charges and got 90 life sentences. No parole, no way out, and I'm certain that many of you will feel me when I say I have zero sympathy for this loser. Texas had planned to go after the death penalty, but now they're not. They say it would be costly, it would take years, and really wouldn't change the fact that he's already locked up forever. Fair, right? Now, as we can look at this a little bit closer, even in Texas, the death penalty is losing steam. It's expensive, it takes forever to carry out. And families of victims often don't want to relive the trauma during a long trial, which is completely fair. Prosecutors said they're thinking of the community, choosing peace over more pain. Now, I've got to say, this entire situation feels pretty complicated. On one hand, the shooter's never getting out, which is a win for all. On the other, people wanted a trial, a chance to confront the person who did this, hear the full story, and see the justice system in action, even if it ended with the death penalty. Now, it ends quietly, and not everyone feels closure. So, how can we all look at this? Remember, hate crimes are still happening today, and you shouldn't need this black, gay, military man to tell you that. If you want to make a difference, support groups helping survivors, and back policies that prevent these tragedies in the first place. Justice is more than a sentence. It's what we do next. Now, those were the 3 stories I had for you today. That's going to wrap up this round of issues for our issues on the docket. Whether we're talking guns, hate crimes, or how our leaders respond to crisis, one thing's for sure. The law isn't just what's on paper. It's how it shows up in our everyday lives. Get your knowledge up, babe. Get your knowledge up. Now, we've got more coming after the break. So grab some water, stretch it out, shake that ass, and when we come back, we'll switch gears and bring a little heat with our next segment. Don't meet me there, baby. Beat me there. All right, y'all, the bolo is out, and it's time to talk about a very important case you should watch. A case that could shape policy, rights, and protections of an entire community for years to come. You heard it here. Precedent is pending. Let's talk about Talbot versus United States and the fight for trans inclusion in the military. So, here's a little backstory on the case. Right now, in the DC Circuit Court, a group of transgender plaintiffs are challenging the military's policy that bars open service by trans individuals. The case, Talbot v. United States, could have sweeping implications for military policy, federal employment rights, and the broader civil rights of the entire LGBTQIA+ community. We've seen this type of policy whiplash before. If you can recall, back in 2016, the Obama administration noted, let's move forward, lifting the ban on open transgender service after a year of study and internal review. Baby, they did their homework. That research, including a well-known RAND report, showed that trans troops wouldn't hurt readiness, morale, or budgets. In fact, thousands of trans service members were already serving just without recognition or protections. Now, fast forward to 2017. Then, former President Trump took to Twitter and reverses the policy in less than 280 characters. He claimed trans service would burden the military with tremendous medical costs and disruption. Though, and I need you to listen closely here, the Pentagon's own data showed that transition-related care costs less than 0.1% of the annual military budget. That's less than the military annually spends on erectile dysfunction medication. So what we're saying here is that dick pills are more important than humans. Humans who want to freely serve in their truest form of expression. Okay. By 2019, the ban had morphed into a regulation that forced trans individuals to serve in their sex assigned at birth, unless they had already been grandfathered in under the previous policy. A technical workaround that still excluded most. So, where are we now with this case? The plaintiffs in Talbot include trans people who have already served with distinction, some of whom were forced out under discriminatory rules. They argue that the ban violates the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause and due process, creating a class of service members treated as less than, not because of performance or ability, but because of identity. The government is defending the policy by citing military deference, and I'll explain that to you. This is a legal principle that gives the military a lot of wiggle room and latitude in creating policy, which is some to me. But the plaintiffs are pushing back, saying you can't use military readiness as a smokescreen for bias. So if you're wondering why this matters, I'll explain it to you clearly. This case is about more than enlistment. It's about whether trans people are allowed to serve their country with authenticity and dignity. It's about whether the courts will allow policies based on outdated fear rather than current science, case studies, and lived experience. And let's not forget the bigger implication. If this ban is upheld, it could open the door to other forms of federal discrimination. But if it's struck down, it could restore momentum for trans rights at a time when they are under immense political attack in state houses across the country. So what's next for the case? The DC Circuit hasn't set a final timeline yet, but oral arguments are expected later this year. With conflicting rulings already popping up in other circuits, there is a real possibility this could be on the Supreme Court's desk by 2026. So, of course, you know I gotta give my 2 cents. I'm gonna give you my little 2-piece. Listen, serving in the military is one of the most public declarations of loyalty and service to this country and sacrifice to this country. If someone is willing to raise their hand and serve, the least, and I mean least we can do, is allow them to do it. And do it as their true self. So support trans veterans. Speak up when bad policy hides behind a uniform. And remember, equal rights don't pause at the gates of a military base. It's much, much far reaching than you think. All right, so we're gonna take a quick break. Need to sip some water, stretch our backs out, and resist the urge to scream into a pillow over all of these constitutional inconsistencies. When we come back, we'll lighten it up just a little bit. It's time for a segment where we dig up those legal fun facts so good, they'll have you citing sources at brunch. That's right. Cite Me, Don't Fight Me is up next. Stay with us. This is Cite Me, Don't Fight Me, the part of the show where I dig up some of the weirdest, oldest, and frankly most head-scratching laws that are still somehow on the books. Now look, I did not make these rules. I didn't make these laws. I just researched them, raise an eyebrow, and wonder who hurt the lawmakers that day. You are welcome for my benevolence. So, let's go rapid fire. 3 laws, all real, all ridiculous. Oof. First up, Massachusetts. Massachusetts says, I can't even get it out. Massachusetts says, don't sell brooms on Sunday. You heard me. In Massachusetts, it's technically illegal to sell both a toothbrush and toothpaste on the same day to the same customer on a Sunday. Oh, and while you're at it, don't try to buy a broom on the Sabbath day either. That's banned too, under their old blue laws. Let me tell you what, if we were thinking about blue and red and what that meant politically, that would not be a blue law of today, okay? That's a different type of blue. And honestly, you're telling me that I can't have fresh breath or a clean floor on a Sunday? What? The devil is really working hard on the Sabbath day. But apparently, so do Massachusetts legislators. Just not on Sundays. This is some truly bizarre and stupid shit. Next, we're heading to Minnesota. Now, Minnesota once let a dog register to vote. Now, Minnesota, you are a crafty girl. A Minnesota man once successfully registered his dog to vote as a protest against how lax the system was before voter ID laws tightened up. All it took, y'all, was a completed form with the dog's name and abracadabra, voter registration confirmed. The dog was a Labrador Retriever, just in case you were wondering, all right? Now, I kind of love the innovation here. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna hold you. But I still wonder how the dog actually voted, or how was the dog able to exercise their right? The dog can't speak. Honestly, though, I trust the lab to make much better decisions than most people of Congress today. Hell, most Americans. So maybe this isn't a dumb thing. Well, no, it's dumb, but I'll allow this one, okay? We love dogs here. And lastly, we're gonna swing on over to California. California has a ban on toad licking. Yes, toad licking. I know it's one of your favorite pastimes, right? This last law in Cali makes me wonder how far back legislators were pro-drugs, because they had to be smoking on something here. In California, it is explicitly illegal to lick the Colorado River toad. Why? Because this toad secretes a hallucinogenic toxin, and apparently enough people wanted to around and find out. They were licking toads to trip out that the state had to step in with legislation to stop it from happening. I mean, I don't want to get high by licking a toad, but times were harder back then, I guess. Imagine being the intern who had to write this law, this toad licking memorandum, into a memo that was then going to be pushed forward to be approved as law. And second, who was the first person to say, hey, I bet if I tongue down that frog, baby, I'm going to be able to see into the multiverse. I'm going to be able to see spaceships on Bankhead, baby. Like, I love Cali, and it is where I call home. But I have some serious questions that need answers when it comes to this particular situation. And are people still doing that today? I hope not. Jesus. So next time someone says, respect the law, respect for the law, respect for the law, respect to the law, shout out, if you know, you know. Just remember, somewhere, there's still a statute preventing you from buying a broom, licking a toad, or letting your golden retriever vote Democrat. Stick around. We got more coming up right after this quick break. All right, y'all, we have arrived at my favorite segment. Objection, Your Honor. And baby, it is time. It's time for me to take the mic, loosen my girdle, throw on my robe, and raise a formal objection to something that's got me legally, ethically, or spiritually bothered. So, this week, I just want to say that I am exhausted, y'all. And I know I'm not alone in that. Whether you're working a 9-to-5, holding down multiple side hustles, caregiving, studying, surviving, or some combination of all of the above, the weight is so heavy right now. There's so much at stake. And there's a lot at stake that I mentioned in this episode. Our freedom, our autonomy, access to education, healthcare, civil rights, the list goes on and on. It's all being debated, limited, Redefine. The air is thick with noise, and sometimes it's too much. And yet, that's exactly why now feels like the right time for me to be going to law school. It's why I show up to bring you this podcast, because being tired doesn't erase my purpose. It confirms it. I'm reminded of my ancestors, both those I know by name and those I only know by legacy. Folks who endured atrocities, oppression, racism, all the things that shape the way I live and move in this world on a daily basis. Their resilience, it planted something in me. That very loud objection I feel in my spirit, that's them. That's me. That's John Lewis telling us to make good trouble. That's a legacy I will not ignore. I've got to continue doing the work. Today, I object to the noise, the distraction, the distortion, the chaos that keeps us disconnected, disempowered, and overwhelmed. The political theater, the media madness, the racism dressed up in policy and corporate suits, all of it. But here's what hit me recently, in therapy no less. I can create my own reality. Let that sit for a second. If they, and by they I mean the ops, can craft entire campaigns around false narratives, why can't we build intentional ones rooted in truth, care, empathy, and power? So this week, I want you to sit with that. What's bothering you? Think about that. What's making you feel unseen, unheard, unacknowledged? And from that place of truth, find one thing you can do to shift the narrative. As Michelle Obama once reminded us, do something. As Kendrick Lamar once reminded us, turn that TV off. And as I'm telling you now, you have more power than you think. And you don't have to wait for permission to use it. That's it for this week's episode of Overruled. If this spoke to you, if it made you laugh, reflect, or want to text somebody about a toad-licking law in California, do me a favor and show me some love. Follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at Overruled Podcast. And find us on YouTube at The Overruled Podcast. Got something you want to share, suggest, or cite? Hey, hit us up at The Overruled Podcast at gmail.com. We read everything. And yes, we talk back. So watch your tone. And hey, if you liked what you heard, please help us grow. Leave a sickening 5-star review. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Share with your good work Judies, your colleagues that y'all talk with one another with, all of those folks. Even send it to your worst enemy, because maybe they need to get some act right. Because guess what? Jokes, justice, and a little podcast wisdom, all of those things are better when shared. And as always, Overrule your doubts with your ambition, the facts, and your receipts, boo. I'll see you next time. Bye. Okay. And we're done. Cut.